Hi, this is Tara Corbin, the Director of Events with Cycle Oregon, and you are listening to the Group Ride Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 12 of the Group Ride Podcast. This is a weekly podcast that focuses on cycling in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. I'm your host, Wes Salmon, and today on the show, my wife and I start off on our tandem adventure with Chapter 1, Learning to Ride. After that, I sit down with Tara Corbin from Cycle Oregon to talk about the event of the week, Joyride, a group ride just for women. So clip in, riders, the Group Ride Podcast is rolling out. In last week's episode, I kicked off our Patreon campaign to give listeners a way to contribute to the long-term viability of the show. If you missed last week's show, here's a quick summary about what our Patreon campaign's all about. For the show to continue to grow and improve, I need to find ways to make it self-supporting. This is critical for expanding the scope of the show. With that growth also comes cost of equipment, hosting, and production. The Patreon campaign is my way of trying to offset those costs while we grow the show's audience. It's important to note that this does not mean that it will cost you anything to listen to the show. The show is and will remain free to download and share. In addition to supporting the show, Patreon subscribers will also get some Group Ride Podcast goodies, like stickers and shirts and water bottles. Thanks to all of those who have subscribed so far, your support is very much appreciated. And if you'd like to take part in our Patreon campaign, you can find out more at thegroupride.com/support the show. One thing my wife has always said when I bring up the idea of riding a tandem is, there is no way I'm riding a bike with you. I've seen how fast you like to go. Then earlier this year, we were doing the rounds at the Seattle Bike Show. We ran across a gentleman named Mark Owings. Mark runs a tandem studio called Tandem Diversity in Bellingham, Washington. I did a quick interview with Mark, and both Summer and I were taken by his approach to a form of cycling that we had long since written off. Because of Mark's interview and subsequent conversations over email, I decided to put together a bit of a tandem adventure project for Summer and I. My hope is to share some of that on the show. Our first task was to drive up to Bellingham on a beautiful spring day and have Mark show us how to ride a tandem. Here's how Summer's first ride started off.
So when I'm ready, then you just hop on.
Okay, you're ready then.
Yeah, I'm ready for you to get on. And you'll notice that the bike's not going anywhere.
And I should clip in then.
Yeah, you should clip in. You do whatever you want to do to get yourself situated where you want to be. You can pedal backwards a few strokes to feel like, make sure you feel like you're
I'm as good as I'm
okay.
Right
now the next thing
without
is,
putting my foot down.
The next thing is you're going to put the pedal in the right place for the captain. So
okay.
It might be different for Wes, but for me, I like to have that left pedal up, forward, and in about the 10 o'clock position. So you're going to pedal backwards a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little more, a little more, a little more, a little right there. Perfect.
Okay.
So now I'm gonna get myself sort of slendered up, if you will. I'm gonna bring my legs in so that I can put one foot on and we can start riding.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, you're done pedaling the pedals around, so you're not gonna hit me in the shins. So I'm gonna bring my legs together a bit more. Now notice what I didn't do is I didn't let the bike lean very much.
Yeah, it feels better than what
Yeah. I'm gonna have to let it lean a little bit to the right.
So I have to trust you that you're not gonna let me down.
I'm not gonna drop you.
Okay.
But I gotta lean it a little bit to the right because I've got to put my foot on the pedal and get ready to go. Now it so happens that I am of a size that I can put a foot on the pedal and I can put my rear on the saddle.
Okay.
Some people may not be big enough to do that, so they might have to keep the saddle with the back of their lower back and then put a foot on.
Okay. The other thing, as soon as you start going, I have to go? Like, basically?
Yeah, but you don't have to go real hard.
Okay.
I mean, there's not much of a slope here.
Okay.
And if you're not going hard enough, I'll tell you.
Okay.
I'll say I need some more help.
I'm going to apologize right now.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
My advice to you for our first ride is just kind of lope along and take it easy.
Okay.
More think about the experience of being on the bike as opposed to providing a whole lot of motive power. And if I need more, I'll tell you.
Okay.
You know, if we're going to fall over or something, I'll say, hey, I need more power.
And the important thing is when you stop, just don't unclip. Just stay where I'm at.
Yeah, right.
Unless you say falling or something crazy.
Well, or I can tell you, let's get off the bike.
Okay.
So at this point, I still have the brakes on. I have the bike leaned just a little bit to the right. I have my right foot down, my left foot's on the pedal, we're ready to start. And so I double check with you. Are you okay? You ready to go?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to let out the brakes and we're going to start pedaling.
And they were off, pedaling up a slight incline from Mark's driveway. When they came back, Summer had clearly changed her tune on riding a tandem, at least when it came to riding a tandem with Mark. After Summer's maiden voyage, we spent more time with Mark and Chris as I learned what it's like to be in the Stoker position, and then Summer and I took our first solo tandem ride together. When we were done, we returned to Tandem Diversity Studio to chat about our experience and the process of learning to ride a tandem. I am here in Bellingham, Washington, speaking with Mark and Chris Owings, who run Tandem Diversity, which is an organization that helps couples learn how to love riding tandems. So Summer and I just spent our afternoon on a tandem for the first time ever. It was an experience for sure, but thanks to Mark's guiding hand, we were able to stay upright and actually learned a lot and had a whole bunch of fun. Mark, you mentioned that there are 3 specific things that you should think about when buying your tandem. Tell me what the first one is.
The first thing that comes to mind for most people, and the first thing we like to ask about, is the budget. Because here at Tandem Diversity, we tend to carry higher-end bikes. And so the bottom line bike that we would sell would be about $3,000. So if a couple is interested in getting into tandeming and that is a good starting point budget-wise, then that's fine. And we can go from there. If that budget is a bit too much, then there are other options to look for used tandems, Craigslist, eBay, things of that sort that can bring the budget down. So really, the budget is the first question that we ask. And then the other reason for asking that is not just whether or not bikes that we sell are attainable for interested couples, but also where in the lineup to begin looking. If a couple comes to us and has a higher budget and wants higher quality components, for example, then we're not going to waste their time showing them the entry-level, lower-level components. We're going to start where they want to start. So that's the first question.
Bikes go all the way up to some amazingly beautifully custom painted co-motion bikes of multiple thousands, more than 3,000. But if you think about people buying a bike for 2 people versus buying 2 separate bikes, the price isn't necessarily out of line with what you would expect to buy 2 nice bikes for. If you spent $2,000 on each bike that you're going to go out and tour on, that's buying 1 tandem effectively for 2 people to ride. The second question you asked was around your plans to travel with the bike. And that is important because that's one of the key things you can't change after you've bought the tandem.
That's correct. The reason that we ask that question is because, in our opinion, the best way to travel with the bike, and by travel we mean air travel, is to do so with a bike that's coupled, that has S&S couplers in it, so that it can be taken apart and packed in airline checkable suitcases so that the whole airline taxi cab process is inexpensive and worry-free. And what you said is exactly correct. In the old days, when S&S couplers were first introduced into the market, say almost 15 years ago now, the tubing on many bicycles was such that you could take a previously existing bike and cut it into pieces and install S&S couplers, and you'd have yourself a travel bike. These days, the tubing is much more specialized. It's more thin-walled. It's more specifically butted and oftentimes ovalized. So it's not possible to buy a non-coupled bike now and then later cut it into pieces to install couplers. The later option would be to buy yet another bike that's already got the couplers in. So you're right. The second question that we like to ask is, do you think that there's a high probability that you will someday, either short-term or long-term, want to take this bike apart and take it on a train or an airplane or put it in the trunk of a car or something that requires the presence of the couplers? Because if the answer to that is yes, then we are only going to show you coupled bikes. We're not going to show you non-coupled bikes.
And the third question was specific around your plans to ride on particular terrains. The unupgradable aspect of a bike, both tandem and normal, is if you need tire clearance. Like any other bike, a tandem will fit whatever tires that the rear end can typically handle, and you can't make it wider. You guys showed us a number of different tandems that they started out at 32 mil tires, 700C, and then there's also others that could take 40, 45s. One that you showed us had the ability to take a mountain bike tire. So thinking about the different places you plan on riding is pretty critical, it sounds like. Is there other aspects of the bike that are not upgradable in the sense that a user needs to think about it before they buy it?
No, I don't think so. And I think you've touched on the two that are the only ones that you can't later upgrade: the presence or absence of the couplers and the design of the frame itself. And it's to reemphasize that if you purchase a bike that is for road riding and can only accommodate tires up to, say, let's say a maximum of 32 millimeters with fenders, then that's fine. If all you're going to do is ride on the road, and maybe sometimes in the winter you need a set of fenders. But if you think you're going to get not necessarily off-road in the sense of single track, but ride some logging roads, ride some gravel, ride some trails that are a bit more aggressive, then yes, starting up front with a bike that's built with clearance for bigger tires makes perfect sense, because you can always put a nice narrow set of road bike tires on a frame that's built to accommodate bigger tires. But it's really hard to cram a set of 29er tires on a skinny road bike. And so, yes, we looked at some 650B. We looked at a Comotion Java, which can accommodate road tires 32 millimeter in width and can go all the way up to 29er tires. So you can ride on big chunks of gravel. So yes, that's a good decision to make up front.
And once you've got the decisions for the aspects of the bike that you can't change, there's a number of different things you can change after you've made the purchase depending on your needs. And one of the key things I'm seeing on a lot of the bikes now are the belt drives. Tell me a little bit about why someone would want to go with a belt drive, either for the timing belt or for both the belt for timing as well as the drive belt.
Right. So in terms of timing belt, in that instance, the belt, the carbon fiber reinforced belt, is going to take the place of the timing chain. And the advantages there are that it's more durable, it lasts longer, it's cleaner, it's quieter, and it's a little bit lighter. You can make that upgrade later on Comotion bikes. You can't make that upgrade on all tandems because there is only one length of timing belt produced by Gates for tandem timing belts. And so the two bottom brackets have to be a specific distance apart. And Comotion makes all of their tandems to that specification so that you can always upgrade any Comotion tandem from a timing chain to a timing belt at any time. Not necessarily true of all other brands of tandems. So couples would be advised, if they think that's an upgrade they'd want to make later, to check before they purchase a tandem to make sure that that's possible. In terms of the drive belt, then to have a tandem with the drive chain replaced by the carbon fiber reinforced belt, you're talking about going from the so-called chain and derailleur drivetrain to a roll-off hub or internally geared hub drivetrain. And there are pros and cons. Very briefly, the advantages are that the belts are quiet, they're clean, they're durable and long-lasting. The advantage of the hub is that it's very durable and that it does not require any adjustment once the bike's been taken apart and reassembled after travel. So they're very, very easy to travel with. Disadvantage, the frame has to be made specifically for the roll-off hub, so you have to know when you buy your tandem that you want to have a roll-off hub tandem. And the other biggest disadvantage probably is the weight. The roll-off hub equipped bike will weigh about 1.5 pounds more than a bike that's equipped with normal chains and derailleurs.
And one of the tricks you showed me was that you can actually change the gears of the roll-off hub while sitting still, which is great when you have to come to an emergency stop at an intersection and then need to start going again. Speaking of starting and going again, my wife and I just finished our couple of test rides with one of the mini tandems here at Tandem Diversity. So I'm going to ask her what her first impression was when we walked in the room and saw all these tandems before we started riding.
Oh boy. Well, coming into this in general, I was a little excited and a little scared because while I trust you, getting on a bike and kind of giving up that steering capability is a little weird, but I'm impressed with the Studio. I mean, it's the bikes are just gorgeous. I mean, the paint jobs on them and I was extremely impressed with.
So we picked one out and took it outside. And the first thing you did was you got to ride with Mark, who is a trained professional when it comes to tandem riding. So you were put in the Stoker position and taught from one of the masters. And you guys started out going up a hill, actually. Tell me about your very first feeling when you actually started pedaling the bike, because I know that you were apprehensive about riding a tandem and giving up control. What did you think when you took that first pedal stroke?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I immediately trusted Mark to get us where we needed to go, and he was very clear with the instructions. Like, my job was to look left, and he told me that. When it was my job to look right, I looked right, to make sure that we were clear and everything and how to get going. And, he was very stable, and that was obviously with his experience. So I definitely felt very stable, but it was really cool. Once we got going and you got the wind blowing, it was nice. It was awesome.
So the second thing we did was they put me in the Stoker position, and I got to learn kind of what it was like to not have the control. And the first thing I noticed was that it felt like I was in the back end of an articulated bus, where I would see Mark make a move with his shoulders, and then I would feel that move happen on the bike a millisecond or half a second later. And it was weird. It was a very weird experience for me. And then I got put in the captain's chair. And my biggest concern right off the bat was being able to make that first pedal stroke as we took off. And luckily we got to take off on the flat ground. We did not have to climb the hill together yet. From that perspective, it was pretty sketchy. I'll admit, we were all over the place.
We were, yeah.
And it took me a while to understand that my need to overcorrect was only going to fight our need to stay stable as two people on the bike. So we went down the road. We did not crash. We were able to come to a complete stop without tipping over. Only you were clipped in. I was on flats because I'm not confident yet. But the idea of making it all the way down the road and not crashing was pretty awesome. And then we were down at the end of the road and we didn't have Mark there to help push us off. So we had to get going on our own again. So we had to work on our countdown, which brings me to the next question from Mark, was around communication. There's a lot of different things that you take for granted when you're riding your own bike. Your brain knows what your legs are going to do and they talk to each other without you having to say a word. But when you're riding a tandem, especially in the front where you don't necessarily get control of the drivetrain directly and your Stoker has a bit more control in that regard, what is your advice for a budding captain like myself on how they can come to terms with the fact that they don't have control of the drivetrain, but they have access to someone who does? Like, what are the things they should be feeling for in the pedal stroke? And what are the things they should be trying to communicate back to their Stoker about what they're going to be doing on the bike?
First of all, let me say that with you two doing your first ride, what you might have sensed as instability was not visible to us as observers at the side of the road. To us, it looked like you got on, rode the bike up to the top of the hill, turned around and came back. That said, your point is excellent. When a couple is riding a tandem bike together, they are constantly in communication, even if they don't know it. You mentioned that on your single bike, your legs and your brain are in communication. Your legs already know what your brain wants to do, and your brain already knows what your legs are going to do. That's going to come on the tandem, ultimately, with the two people. When I rode with Summer, after 3 minutes, I stopped telling her about my shifts. After 5 minutes, I stopped telling her about when I was going to pedal and when I was going to coast. And she immediately picked up on that. The first couple of times we went over bumps, she tried to stop pedaling to go over the bump, and she could sense that I wasn't going to stop pedaling. So after about maybe 4 or 5 bumps, she didn't even try to do that anymore. The point is that we were communicating. She and I were communicating. I was communicating with my feet to her feet, and that was communicating then to her brain. And it took us less than 5 minutes to establish the communication. But that said, in answer to your question about what's the best advice for the captain, the best advice for the captain is to, until those more subliminal forms of communication develop between you two and are perfected, communicate verbally. Tell your Stoker when a bump is coming, when you're going to stop pedaling, when you're going to start pedaling again, when you want them to look to the left or the right, when you want them to signal one direction, when you're going to stop suddenly. What you're going to do coming up to a stop sign, your Stoker doesn't necessarily know what you're planning to do. So when Summer and I came up to a stop where I didn't have to fully stop and put my foot down, I told her that. I said, I'm not going to stop here and put my foot down. We're just going to slow down, look both ways, and then we're going to go if it's clear. And then when I was with you, you may recall that we got to a corner we actually had to stop. We planned not to, but we had to because a car was coming. But the point is that I verbally communicated those things. The time will come when almost all verbal communication can stop and it becomes bodily communication. But at first, the captain can't overdo the verbal communication. So that's the answer to your question, is be verbal, be vocal.
Yeah, and that's what I felt like I was trying to do, is basically everything I would do with the bike other than steering slightly left, slightly right, I was going to let her know. And for the most part, there was no response because she's like, yeah, that's fine. So we went on our first ride and it was super sketchy, but we didn't crash. Then we went on our second ride down the same stretch of road. My goal was to go a little faster. up that same stretch of road. It's probably about a 1%, maybe 0.5% grade. And on a regular bike, you wouldn't have noticed it. But on a tandem where you've got two people and it's heavier and you notice it, and the slower you go, the easier it is to get sketchy. So we went a little harder and we were instantly more stable. And then coming back down, where we're coasting down the road for a lot of it, the speed really helped as well. But I think from my perspective, the second time we went was probably about twice as good as the first time. So the learning curve immediately was apparent that it doesn't take long for your body to start to understand kind of what the situation is for weight transfer, power transfer, steering inputs, and so forth. I'm going to ask Summer if she felt the same way.
I did. And the one thing I learned, I think probably after my ride with Mark and then that being my second ride with you, was that how much power the Stoker has in getting going. That finally clicked because I was just thought I was starting at the same time and it all kind of just worked in conjunction and you were putting out the same amount of power. But when you told me after, you were like, that was great getting going because I was kind of pushing and I felt it in the pedal that it was me. Then it kind of clicked that, that person's vital if you're going to get moving so that the captain can get settled. They've been holding you up. Now it's your turn.
Yeah, it's just tiring. It's tiring me and the captain. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. The last time that we started from a dead stop, you put the power down. Up a little bit of a hill. You put the power down and it immediately made my life easier as the captain because I could focus on what was most important, which was keeping the front of the bike in a steady state going where we wanted to go, as opposed to in the back of that parked car that was in front of us. So that was really my only goal is to not hit a car, and it worked out in our favor.
Yeah, I learned how to not to giggle.
Yeah, I found that she was laughing a lot. And when she laughs, she gets happy legs. And when she gets happy legs, they don't pedal at a proper cadence or at least a predictable cadence. I'm sure it's proper. So her style of pedaling while laughing was challenging. Yes, it was quite challenging. So at one point I had to remind her, concentrate, let's keep this thing moving forward and having a good time. But yeah, too much giggling can cause for some interesting tandem riding. I want to end this quick interview with you guys, letting our listeners know that they can reach you at your website at tandemdiversity.com. Yes. They can come by if they're in Bellingham or even come up and schedule an appointment with you guys where you guys pretty much teach people how to decide whether or not tandeming is right for them from a budget perspective as well as a compatibility perspective. What would you expect someone who comes to understand tandeming to do in regards to research before they call you guys? Is there anything specific they should do other than figure out what their budget is?
We're happy to have them come without doing much research. If they want to do some homework ahead of time, then looking around some of the tandem manufacturers' websites is good. Talking to any friends that they have who have tandem experience is good. And then there's a company that manufactures tandems in California called Santana Tandems. And the Santana website, we don't carry their tandems, but we're good friends with the owners of the company. Santana Tandems, their website is santanatandem.com. They actually have it's a sort of partly joke and pretty much for real. They have a little test that you can take on their website where under the Getting Started pull-down tab, and you can give yourself that. You answer a series of questions as a couple, and you score yourself based on your answers. And then when you get to the end, you look at your score, and what your final score is gives you an idea of your likelihood to be successful enjoying tandeming together. And it's, I think, the highest score is it's no fair. You obviously already own a tandem and enjoy it. To the lowest score, no, figure something else out. Go buy some golf clubs or something. But looking around the manufacturer's websites is helpful. It doesn't really matter because we're welcoming of people of all abilities and all experiences. And actually, one of the things that you were just saying, if I can drag this out just a little bit longer, while the two of you were talking, both of you are cyclists. And so you're not learning new skills. You're simply adapting skills you already have to a new situation. Let's take, for example, if you've always driven the vehicle that you're driving today and you decided that you wanted to own a pickup truck, and so you bought a pickup truck and got in it, it's going to handle a little bit differently than your current rig, but the basic principle of driving is the same. And it won't take you very long to learn how to drive the pickup truck versus your current rig. Same with a tandem. You're both capable cyclists, and so it doesn't take you very long to learn, these are the new things I have to do as a tandem cyclist as opposed to a single cyclist. And that's why Summer got on, and within 5 minutes, she's already learned how to be a stoker because she had the basic skill set. Folks don't have to come with that basic skill set. We can start from a much lower level than you two started, but whereas your basic skill development portion of the morning took probably 30 minutes, some people might take an hour or more.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you guys sitting down with us and talking about tandems, and more specifically, letting us take out some of these beautiful tandems to ride. And I'm glad I didn't lay it down. That was fun. Thanks, Summer, for taking the chance to ride a bike with me. I know there was a time where you said, "I'll never ride with you. You ride too fast."
I believe the words were "hell no."
Yes, we've gotten beyond the "hell no, I won't ride with you" to that was kind of cool. I'd like to do that again. So I appreciate you taking the time as well, Summer.
Yeah. Well, I just like to say too, I mean, the whole experience, if anyone's thinking of doing this, has just been fantastic. I mean, Mark and Chris are super, super, super nice and very welcoming. And it's just great to actually kind of learn it from, and not have to just jump on the bike right away, but just to learn kind of like what the whole communication is and everything, and what the expectations are of each person. I mean, that's huge. Usually you just hop on a bike and go, so.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. We both appreciate you coming and spending the time with us.
And that's chapter 1 of our tandem story. Since visiting Tandem Diversity in Bellingham, Summer and I have borrowed a tandem from a friend and are looking forward to improving our coordination and confidence on the bike. Over the next few months, I hope to provide some insights on what we learn, as well as what others are doing on tandems. Stay tuned for chapter 2, coming later this summer. Last week, I interviewed Todd and Brad from Redmond-based touring company Bicycle Adventures. Between May 4th and May 15th, you can enter to win a Bicycle Adventure starter kit, including a backpack, hat, socks, and a water bottle at thegroupride.com/giveaway. You must be 18 years or older and live in the continental United States to enter. The event of the week for this episode is Joyride, a women's-only ride in Dayton, Oregon, just about 30 miles southwest of Portland. So I'm here with Tara Corbin, events director at Cycle Oregon. So thanks for being on the show, Tara.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about the rides that Cycle Oregon puts on so that folks can both visit Oregon and see Oregon, but also support the organization. I know that there's 3. The first one coming up June 10th is Joyride, which is a women's only ride that my wife is actually going to ride in and I'm going to volunteer for. But tell me a little bit about Joyride.
Okay, so Joyride is our newest event. That is a one-day bike ride for women only. And, one of the philosophies of Cycle Oregon is you pedal, we'll take care of the rest. So we really want to, for all of our events, really take care of all the details and really let you enjoy the overall experience. And that's the other thing we hear at Cycle Oregon. It's just not about the time on your bike, which that's a huge, that's why they sign up to ride their bike. But it's the overall experience, what happens before, during, and after you've been on your bike. And so Joyride is just this really great event that brings together, riders of all levels. Our venue is just absolutely beautiful at Solar Family Estates in Dayton, Oregon. And we offer 3 different routes, anything from, 16 to 38 to 60 miles, fairly flat, not a lot of climbing. We have medical support, mechanical support on the ride, and we have a few rest stops where you can stop and get snacks and beverages. Most of the food there is locally sourced. We have berries from right next to the vineyard. We get hazelnuts just down the road. So a lot of locally sourced food at the rest stops. And then you get back to Stoler and we have live music, just a lovely finish line feast by Spin Catering, who once again has primarily locally sourced food. We have acupuncture, we have a gift shop, and it's just a cool feeling. There's a lot of camaraderie. Everybody's there having a good time. You see groups of friends hanging out. It's just a really good, fun vibe. And we look forward to seeing you and your wife on Joyride. Thank you very much. For more information about Joyride presented by Cycle Oregon, go to thegroupride.com/joyride. Thank you for listening to episode 12 of the Group Ride podcast. If you would like to get in touch with me or the show, you can find me online on Twitter and Instagram at the Group Ride Pod, and on Facebook at the Group Ride Podcast. As always, you can send me feedback about this or any episode of the show via email at podcastfeedback@thegroupride.com. You can also check out the website,
which has a full show archive, book reviews, and some other cool stuff at www.thegroupride.com. I'm your host, Wes Salmon. See you on the next group ride.